Hello everyone and welcome back to Lucky Loaders 15, where I'll be giving you seven of my best bets for tomorrow's racing. And this video will include my Irish 1000 Guineas preview, which will be a little bit later, and also as well I'll be launching a new concept. So if you're familiar with my nap and my long shot and my next best and my extra tips, we're going to be launching a new concept as well, so stay tuned for that. But before we get into the tips for tomorrow, just want to quickly recap on how today's picks went. We all started off with an 11-1 winner with Cliff Hill at Wolverhampton for Ryan Tate and Sir Mark Prescott. Travelled into the race quite nicely, I thought, and just got up in the nick of time to win on the line. I think this could be the horse that you can follow throughout the season, a typical Sir Mark Prescott handicapper that gets a couple of wins under their belt together, and I could definitely see this horse fit in that profile. And I think over a mile, that trip was over 7 furlongs today, but when it goes up to a mile, I think it will be even better, because especially on the dam side, like you would have seen on the graphics last night, this horse has got plenty of stamina in its pedigree. So that was a good start there. A Wee Dram was our extra tip at Newbury for Will Buick and Alan King. Now that horse, I'm not sure really what happened. I think the race kind of was a bit of a weird one, the way it was run. It was Lawn Ranger, I think it was, for Michael Atwater, that went out in front like a horse possessed. They went so quick, and then the race kind of just like fell apart, and it was a bit of a messy race. Mel Davis, though, was the well-backed favourite for George Scott. I was against her, really. She's been a cliff horse for me in the past. I learned that from last season. I know she'll be a cliff horse for a lot of people now, obviously, after a run at Newcastle last time where she was very eye-catching, but I had my fingers burnt with her last time I backed her anyway was at Glorious Goodwood last year, when she got into all kinds of trouble. I think she's just a horse that for some reason she just can never get a clear passage, and she is a talented horse, but she has to have a lot fall right for her, and she's a bit of a hard luck case that we kind of all have in racing. We all have our cliff horses, and I know for some people Mole Davis will be one of them. We then went to the Irish 2000 Guineas. Fair play to Siskin. I've just watched it. It was a good win in the end, quite comfortable, I thought, for Colin Keane and Joe Lyons. He got into a little bit of traffic problems, but once he got out, got a clear run, he asserted in the closing stages very well and was a very worthy winner, and he now remains unbeaten. He is maybe a bit playful down at the start. In the Middle Park last year, you might remember he was withdrawn after his antics. I think he went under the stools or something, and then even today, just before the start of the race, he was playing up a little bit, and they had to put the blindfold on him. So definitely got to watch him maybe down at the start every now and again, because he might blow it one day. But that's how the Guineas unfolded there with the winner. And our selection, free solo for Jessica Harrington. Not sure what happened, really. I think it ran too bad to be true. It was looking okay at one point, but maybe the track didn't suit it, and possibly the horse needed the run. I did see in one or two comments after, unfortunately, I put it up, that that they wanted to get a run into the horse, and maybe it might be better next time out. But I wasn't the only one that fancied it at a price. I saw a few other shrewd people. I saw Andy Holden, he put it up after me. He didn't copy me, but he just kind of probably was coming in from the same angle, that it was a weak race on paper, or we thought it was, and it was worth maybe taking something at a long shot, and that's the kind of angle I was looking at it. And then yeah, it's just one of those horses that sometimes we get, they just don't run their race. We then have our nap still to run at the current time of recording. I was drifted out for Rafe Beckett, so around about 2-1. Not too concerned. I think it should go okay, because it's going to be receiving a bit of weight, as the Roger Charlton horse that's gone favourite has to concede a penalty. So hopefully Jacksonian can do the business, and then we've at least had two good winners on the day, and hopefully we can continue the form going into tomorrow. So we'll get straight into the thick of things now, and we're going to start with my nap, which runs in the 205 at Sandown with a horse called Well of Wisdom currently 4-1 with bookmakers at the moment, best price at the time of recording. And this horse is trained by Charlie Appleby, and Will Buick, who I think is going to have a good day tomorrow, is booked for the ride. Now this horse last season as a 2-year-old was running in some really classy races and listed in group level, won a listed race, I think it was over in France, and bumped into the likes of Earthlight and Alson, who are very good horses for Andre Fabre. And then in the winter, this horse went out to Maidan and won a handicap over a mile. I think 7 furlongs tomorrow will suit it. And even though this horse does have to carry top weight, I'm not really concerned about too many of his rivals tomorrow. I don't think it's a particularly strong race. And I still think this horse has the potential to improve this season. And at 4-1, I think that looks value. And I think come post time tomorrow, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he was around about a 9-4, 2-1 shot. I'm quite keen on his chances tomorrow. And I think he's got a very good chance of going close. So he's going to be my nap bet. We then go into the new format, and this is going to be called Loaders Lay. Now, I'm going to be using the Betfair exchange as my prices on here. Now, some of you that have been following me for the last couple of years know that sometimes, every now and again, I'm always against certain horses and big races, but it's something that I do on the quiet all the time as well. I always look at the vulnerable favourites every day that I think are too short or I'd like to take on, and I use the Betfair exchange, and sometimes I lay them for a place as well. You can lay up to 4 places on the Betfair exchange if you're not comfortable with it. And the race that I've chosen to take on a horse tomorrow is in the 240 at Sandown with a horse called Sunday Sovereign, trained by Roger Varian, and Sylvester de Souza's booked for the ride. Now this horse used to be with a trainer over in Ireland called Peter Toomey, I think that's how you pronounce his name, but after his performance in the Norfolk Stakes last year, King Power Group that own him sent him over to Roger Varian, which I thought was a bit of an odd move. And he disappointed in the Norfolk when he was favourite. He finished in 8th place, and I'm not sure if anything came to light that day. But I would be quite keen to take him on in this race. It's going to be a listed race. It's called the Scurry Stakes at Sandown. It's right in the middle of the course, actually. It's quite weird. If you've never seen Sandown, the 5 furlong course, it's actually right in the middle of the track, and it's just a long straight that goes past the golf course. Yeah, I think this race is a lot more competitive than the betting suggests for Sunday Sovereign's chances. He's about 2-1 shot in some places, and if you want to lay him on the Betfair exchange, I've actually seen 3.5, which is the equivalent, if you're not familiar with the exchange, to around about a 2 to 5 on shot if you want to lay him. So that means if you put £1 on, you would make 40p profit. But sometimes it's a nice little thing to do, sometimes take on the horses, and if you get on a bit of a roll, you can make some decent money out of it, and basically you're going to be having the whole field running against you if you want to take him on. I thought the likes of Lazuli, Dream Shot, El Raya or Lath, even Keep Busy for John Quinn, you know, they could all give this horse a run for its money. And I wasn't really that keen on Sunday Sovereign. I think he'll need the run, and Sylvester de Souza's not been riding that great at the moment. He's had quite a few fancied horses, and he's not been delivering as much as the market thinks so. Yeah, I think Dream Shot would probably be my number 1 choice, but I think Lazuli as well, moving up from the handicap ranks, ran a good race last time. He's a really interesting contender for Godolphin. So that's going to be the Loaders Lay. And to help you get on the Betfair exchange, I've actually got a link in the description box below, which you can click on, and that means you'll get a £20 free bet to use on the Betfair exchange, and you can use that on anything of your choice. So if you're not a Betfair customer, make sure you click the link below if you want to have a bet on the Betfair exchange. And we'll be doing more of those for the foreseeable future, and we'll be doing a lot next week with Royal Ascot. There'll be quite a few horses that I want to take on. Some of you, like I said, will remember that I've taken on the likes of Pinatubo recently, taken on the likes of Saxon Warrior in the past, some big horses, Surname as well in the King George. When these big horses sometimes turn up for the big races, I'm not always convinced by their profile, and I always think that sometimes they're worth taking on. And Sunday Sovereign tomorrow, he's going to be Loaders Lay of the day. So that's the selection there. We then go back to the normal betting for the 315 at Sandown, and we're going with a horse here called Solid Stone in the 315, and this horse is going to be my next best. Now this horse is trained by Sir Michael Stoute, who's in good form, and Will Buick, like I said, I think he'll have a good day tomorrow. He's but for the ride. Now this horse seems to go very well fresh. He won last season going fresh, And I thought off his mark of 94, he looks still very well treated. Now, his best trip seems to be a mile, and when he was campaigned over a mile and a quarter, I just thought he was just a non-stare at the trip, really. And I think dropping back to a mile could see him to good effect. And if you actually go back through some of his form, he's got some fair form at Sandown. He was just touched off in a finish last season when he finished in second place. And I think this is going to be the time to catch him tomorrow. And I still think he could have a bit of mileage in his handicap mark over this trip, and I don't think there's too many rivals in here that can worry him tomorrow. So for me, Solid Stone is a solid option at 2-1, and that's going to be my next best. We're then going to go for the extra tip, so this is in the extra section. We go for the 3:35, a Group 3 race at Newbury, and I'm going with Zaaki here, currently 4-1, another Sir Michael Stoute trained horse, but this time Ryan Moore, who's riding at Newbury tomorrow, is but for the ride. Now this horse goes unbelievably well fresh. He's won his last 2 seasonal appearances, and he beat Barney Roy last year in a Group 3 at Ascot, and then he went on to win at Epsom. So he's definitely a classy horse, and even though he does have to give away a couple of pounds to King of Comedy tomorrow, King of Comedy for me is just a head case. And I saw that Frankie Dettori had a ride at Newbury tomorrow, but he's not going to be riding King of Comedy, which I thought was quite strange, and they've given the ride to Martin Harley. And he was, I should say, Frankie Dettori was actually the partner of King of Comedy quite a few times last year. And I just think that Zaaki represents better value in the market, and we know that we're going to get a good run for our money. And the mile trip is his forte. So for me, I think there's a lot of positives about Zaaki tomorrow, and he's going to be my extra tip. And I'm just going to recommend a win-only bet there. We then go to the 6:15 for my long shot at the Curragh in the evening racing over in Ireland with a horse called Lariat in a very competitive handicap. But I think this horse at 20-1 with 5 places on offer isn't a bad pick. This horse is trained by Adrian McGuinness, and Colin Keane is booked for the ride tomorrow. Now this horse is going to be making a stable debut tomorrow after moving over from Andrew Bolden's yard. Now Andrew Bolden got some good form out of him. He was running against the likes of Sir Ron Priestley, who went to finish second in the English St Leger last year behind Logician. He also as well bumped into the likes of Sam Cook, who is a very progressive horse for Rafe Becker. He's got a lot of good form, and off a mark of 86, I think he looks fairly well treated. He's run okay fresh in the past as well, and he's going to be getting plenty of weight tomorrow. And I think because they've gone and booked Colin Keane, Connections expect a very good run at 20-1. I think that's a massive price, and I could easily see him going very well. And that's why he is going to be Loader's long shot tomorrow, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can have a very good run for our money. We then go to the 7 o'clock with another extra bet at Leicester. So just one tip at Leicester tomorrow with a horse called Danking. This horse is trained by Alan King, and Tom Quealy is booked for the ride. Now Tom Quealy isn't the jockey he once was, when obviously he was riding Frankel a few years ago now. But he's still a very capable horseman on his day. Now this horse is currently 10-1 with bookmakers at the moment, and it's going to be making its handicap debut off a mark of 60 tomorrow. Now, if you actually go back and watch some of this horse's form from last season, he didn't really achieve much as a 2-year-old, but I think he was always going to be a 3-year-old. His first ever race came at Wolverhampton, and when he was running at Wolverhampton, he bumped into some really good horses that day, and he still showed a good attitude to plug on, but he always suggested from that race he was going to want further. He bumped into horses from like Charlie Appleby and Gosden's yard, so he's running against some good horses. And he's by Dancilli, this horse, and on the dam side there's a lot of stamina, and a lot of them made better 3-year-olds, and a lot of this horse's half brothers and sisters have gone on to much better things. So off a mark of 60, you'd like to think he's got some improvement and some scope off that mark. And I didn't think this race was particularly strong tomorrow, and Alan King is a trainer that I've got a lot of time for when it comes to his flat horses. We mentioned it with a Wee Dram. Okay, a Wee Dram didn't live up to much, but he does have some good flat horses at his disposal. And I just think at 10-1 tomorrow, this is a ridiculous price. You can get 4 places with some firms I've seen out there. I think Sky Bet are paying 4 places. And if you can get the 10-1 still with the 4 places, I think that represents good value. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if he could maybe have about £5 or £10 in hand come the end of the season. I think this is a workable mark. Obviously, he could flop, but I just thought Dan King at 10-1, you know, was a very interesting handicap handicap debutant tomorrow and represents quite a bit of value, so that's why I've gone for him. Then we then end with my final tip of the day, which is going to go in the extra column for the Irish 1000 guineas in the 7:15 at the Curragh, and I'm not going with Albania for Jessica Harrington. She's a horse that I've not really warmed to, again a bit like Mel Davis. She always seems to find some excuses. She is unbelievably talented, but the one I quite like for the potential angle is Peaceful for Aidan O'Brien and Jamie Heffernan. Now, if you've listened to the In the Saddle podcast where I do it with my mate Mark Horosky, you would have heard me speaking about this horse, Peaceful. I'm really excited about her. She won a really good race at Thurles last year when she broke her maiden tag, and she did it in really good style. And then she went to Newmarket for a listed race, and she met Bournemouth Pride. Now, that day it paid to be prominent, and she had a lot of ground to make up, and she only just got beat, but I think that wasn't on ground that suited her. It was quite heavy ground that day, and on more of a quicker surface I think she'll be seen to better effect, and I think she could be, after Love, the #1 filly. And I think Peaceful should go for the Oaks if she wins this race. I think she's definitely got Oaks written all over her, and at 7-2 I think she's a massive price. Now, I think this is actually a better race than the Irish 2000 guineas that we had or today, but it will be yesterday if you're watching it tomorrow. But yeah, I think this is a better race on paper. There's some more interesting types, but I think Peaceful is the best of Ballydoyle that they're running tomorrow, and I think it will be the one that gives Albania the most to think about. Albania could win this race. I'm not totally against her, but for me, Peaceful, I've got a lot of time for this filly, and I think this year we'll see her in really good light, and I think she'll develop massively from her 2-year-old career. So yeah, Peaceful it is to end things off in the 7:15 at the Curragh, and that's going to be my tip in the 1000 Irish guineas. So there are my 7 best bets for tomorrow. We'll just recap it quickly. In the 205 at Sandown, we go for Well of Wisdom at 4-1. That's my nap. We then go to Loder's Lay. In the 240 at Sandown, we're going to lay Sunday Sovereign at 3.5. The current price on the Betfair exchange, and you can click the link down below if you want to have those free bets, £20 worth of free bets with Betfair. And then we go back to the normal betting with the next best in the 315 at Sandown with Solid Stone 2-1. We then go with an extra bet in the 335 at Newbury, Zaaki at 4-1. We then go and wait a couple of hours for our long shot in the 6:15 at the Curragh with Lariat at 20-1 each way with 5 places. We then go to Leicester for the 7 o'clock. This is an extra bet with Danking for Tom Quealy and Alan King, 10-1 each way, 4 places. And then we end with the Irish 1000 guineas with my extra tip in the 7:15 at the Curragh. We're going for Peaceful, 7-2, win only bet, but all the bets and the prices for them will be in the description box below if you didn't catch any of that. But yeah, that's the place to look, and also as well the link will be there, and also as well our profit and loss record for the month. So anyway, that's all I've got to say about that. So if you haven't done so already, please subscribe here to my YouTube channel. Really appreciate it. We're going to have lots of great content next week when we've got Royal Ascot coming up. So there'll be lots of videos around that time giving you my thoughts and feelings for each race. So make sure you subscribe to not miss out when I upload that content. Also as well, you can follow me on social media where my Twitter handle is @LuckyLoaders15. You can check out my website as well for a full portfolio of my work, which is www.chrisloaderracing.co.uk. Please gamble responsibly, and we'll be seeing you soon.